off on page Yud of the Mimer, and we were
Recording
to
in
be able to
progress.
explain the idea how we have in Simchas Torah two opposites. We have the idea of Torah, which is Havana Vasaga, understanding and comprehension, plus we have the idea that the Torah needs us to dance with it, that dancing is something that's the opposite of logic and intellect and so on. So we went on to explain how the entire Tishrei is a union of opposites. Primarily, he brought examples of Bina, how we have both in Shmini Atzeres is the level of Bina, Sukkot is Makif in the Bina, Yom Kippur, which is Chuvah, which is Bina, Shofar, which is Chuvah, which is Bina, Aseres Mechuvah is Bina, and along with that, it's the highest, most level, the level of Yechida, the level of the Merchava Atzmi of the Ein Sof, many different levels that are totally beyond Seder Ishtalshus, beyond the level of understanding, beyond the level of Bina. So we see that the entire Tishrei is a combination of that which transcends intellect, joined with intellect. The joining of two opposites. So now he's going to explain how can that be such a thing, that you can have this, if it's Bina, then it's not higher than Bina, and so on. So again, top of page Yud, the 6th page of the downloads. Ois Gimel. Chinyan, but the idea behind this is B'chinas Bina Gufa, in Bina itself, Yeshnam Shnei Hafachim. Bina itself, as I mentioned at the end of yesterday's shir, has in it two opposites, two extremes. Shemechad Gis on the one hand, Hareze Inyan Shalavon of Asagim, Ba'ifin Shal Schalkus Leprotim Daf. It's a matter of understanding, comprehension in such a way that it becomes divided specifically into details. Well, that's the whole idea of Bina, breaking things down. More so than Chochmah, it's just a general flash of an insight. Everything is coalesced, everything is meshed together. The whole idea of Bina is placing everything in its particular chamber, its particular location. This is where this starts, this is where this ends, and so on. Well, Idach Yis, on the other hand, Yadua, it's known, She's Galus Atikiva Bina Dafke, the revelation of the highest, most levels, the highest level of Kesser, which represents even higher than that. The level of Atik becomes revealed. Pnimius HaKesser, the inner level of Kesser, becomes revealed specifically in Bina. The idea behind this is there's a revelation of the Eibishter's delight, like we find. That the face of Rabavo lit up, shone when he found a new Tesefta. And the Tesefta is like a Braisa. That is the light that comes from the revelation of the light of Chachma. In other words, a new insight, a new flash. To such a degree does Chachma have to do with Atik, shepnimius abba pnimius Atik. We say that the inner part of Chachma is identical with the inner part of Atik Yomin. So, what is then the relationship and what is unique about the connection of Bina to Atik if we already see in a Sphira higher than that, in Chachma, that Chachma has this revelation of the light and it's identified completely with Atik, which houses the light. So the Rebbe says a very interesting point. It's interesting. A lot of Mamorim don't usually contrast this. Some Mamorim will talk about the connection of Chachma with Atik. Some Mamorim will talk about the connection of Bina with Atik. Here the Rebbe puts them side by side and contrasts it and explains what is Bina's advantage over Chachma with its connection to Atik. Kol Mokin, line 10, still in all, since the light of Chachma is only in a way of a point. It's not differentiated, and it's also not broad. It's not like Bina, that the whole idea of Bina is broadness, like we say, Bina is Rechayvus Anar, taking the Mayon, taking the wellspring of Chachma, and expanding it. But since the Eira Chachma is only a point, therefore the delight of Chachma is only in a way of a point alone. And therefore it's only in a way like concealed, like the broadness, the expansion of it is not there. Still it doesn't have the delight, enjoyment, the flavor, if you will, of the way it comes down in the the way it comes out in the broadness and the expansion that Bina has, that will expand this delight. Therefore, only in Bina, not only is the inner part of Bina the inner part of Atik, Eliyaserim is even more so. She's Galus Atik Bina Davke. The revelation of Atik is specifically in Bina. We do not say this Galus Atik is in Chachma. We say the term that this Galus Atik is in Bina. How come? Because you have that type of, his Galus means expansiveness, broadness. Where do you have the true broadness? You have it specifically in Bina. Now he's going to just bring a Kabbalah term that or idea that will express this as well. According to Kabbalah, it is brought down there are 7 heichalos, and Chassidus explains how does it work 7 heichalos if there's 10 spheres, 7 chambers. There are certain names for it. On the side, it brings down Libnus Hatzapir, Etz Mashamayim, Noigas, Kus, Avarotzen. The highest of these 7 Eicholos is Kodesh HaKadoshim. So, it's explained that these 7 include the Midos and Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is Bina, includes in it Chachma, and the whole Chabad is all included in Kodesh HaKadoshim, because Kodesh HaKadoshim is Bina. Based on what we just now explained about Atik's special relationship with Bina, we can understand why specifically Bina is called the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim. Let's see in the brackets, line 16. That's why the reason that the general idea of the chambers that are brought down in Kabbalah have a number 7, even though there's actually 10 spheres. Because the chamber of Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is Bina, which is the 7th, going from the bottom up of all the chambers, it includes all the first 3 chambers, all the first 3 spheres. In some places it refers to it as Keser Chachma Bina, or it's referring to Chachma Bina Das. But the main thing is that Bina has this unique thing that it is like considered the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim, and everything else in the intellect is subservient to it. Why? Because Bina has his Galus Atik. Whereas even Chachma, that about Chachma says Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik, etc., but it doesn't have Atik manifested to that degree like it is in Bina. Now back to what we're trying to bring out over here. We're trying to say that Bina has in itself 2 extremes. And therefore, all these different occasions that we spoke about throughout Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shmini Atzeres, Sukkot, etc., have in it a beyond limitation and within the limitations of Bina, because Bina itself, which is the idea of all these different Yom Tovim, have in it both aspects, beyond and the limitation. So the Rebbe is going to ask, this itself needs explanation. How can Bina join both of these together? So it says in line 21, Amnam Avshemetzinu she'ikar is Galas HaTainuk. Atiku Bina, though we find that the main revelation of the light, which is the level of Atik, is in Bina, this itself needs understanding, it needs explanation. What's the reason for this? Bina specifically measured in the boundaries. How does the intellect being grasped in Bina works, like we mentioned before? Bina, not like Chokhmah, takes things and breaks it down into details. Shaideis and Nikorim Aksavis, when you break down the details, so then the edges, the ends become recognizable. In other words, you know where the beginning is, where the middle, where the end. Shal yodam hitvisa kol davar. When you have edges, when you have sides to things, that's how you can grasp it. The reason why I can grasp any physical object with my hands is because it has dimensions. If it wouldn't have height, if it wouldn't have length, if it wouldn't have depth, if the object would go on indefinitely, I couldn't grab onto it. The being able to grab onto it is because it has dimensions, it has service, it has ends. The same thing in an idea. When can I grasp the idea? When I have defined it and we have made a middle, a beginning, an end, etc., etc. So Bina defines things. Bina breaks things down into different parts. Shahu, top of the next page, Inyan Agabolo, top of page Yud Aleph, that's the idea of a boundary and a limitation. So therefore, when you're dealing with boundaries, seems to be just the opposite of this higher idea, the delight. Seemingly it's the opposite of delight. That delight we know Chassidus brings down is higher than will. In Kesser, for example, delight is associated with Atik, the inner level of Kesser, and will is associated with Arich Ampin, the lower level in Kesser. So delight is higher than will. And will, we already know, is beyond limitation. So for sure, delight, Shulamayla Magbol, is beyond limitation. So how does it fit in that the greatest delight is in Bina, when delight is about without limitations, without definitions, being totally not expansive, and Bina is about setting everything in its place, limiting everything, boxing everything in, and so on. But the idea behind this is line 3. When does anything reach its perfection? When it comes into measure, when it comes into the limitations of length and width and division into details. Only when that division takes place, when that breakdown takes place, that's when the delight comes to the fore. So you can explain an example. Line 6. This is to be understood by using a metaphor from a person that's building a home because of the delight he has from the matter of having a home. When does the delight become revealed? Gilu Yatainik, like we said in Bina, is the Gilu Yatainik, this galus. Only after the home is completed in all of its details, the way he intended initially. In his mind, he imagined what and how and the house would look, how many rooms, and what type of decorations, what type of paint, etc., etc. Then it becomes revealed the delight that was in the essence of his soul and the idea of having a home. That up until he comes up with all those details, up until he manifests all those details and all those limitations, that delight will not become revealed. So he comes into his home, and you have the bare bones. You have walls. There's some outer walls. You don't even have any walls separating the rooms yet. The windows are still have cardboard over there. He's not gonna. There's no delight revealed, even though the level of delight is like expansive and unlimited. But here it's only, and here it's like a very general thing, no details yet, etc. No, the delight is only when it comes down to the details. So now we're going to come down to the same thing. Comes by the Eibishter in a similar vein. Line 11, with the Gemasi Lamaila bin Hashlam is Oisvir HaKavonesh Nisav Elias Leisbarach Dir B'Tachtoinim. This is similar above concerning fulfilling the intention that Hashem desired to have a home. Down here below, that when is the delight of the Eibishter, his desire means that he has a delight in this home when it comes down into the details. And from this is also understood concerning the revelation of the delight, the way it comes down into Bina. Dafke, specifically, it comes into Bina. When does one have the delight? Only after the idea, the intellect, comes down in length and breadth and division into details, as opposed to when you first have the point of the idea, the flash, the level of Chokhmah. You still don't know, practically speaking, will this lead you down the correct path? Will it maybe go off somewhere else? Will, when you develop it, it'll go off point completely? So you're still reserved in your delight. You're still reserving judgment and reserving your enjoyment, though he said, Tzav upanav, his face lit up as soon as he saw it. But it's not the same as when he actually develops it in Bina and breaks it down and he has the entire picture now set out before him. That's when he has the full delight and enjoyment over there. That's why Bina houses the level of Atik more so than even Chacham. Any questions? We're holding on page Yud Aleph, bottom of the page, Ois Daled, line 18. So now, after we explained how Bina bridges the idea of the highest level, the level of delight, with the level of details, so now we can understand how we have this bridge in all the Yom Tovim throughout Tishrei, and in summation, in conclusion, it's manifested in Simchas Torah. According to this will also be understood concerning the Yom Tovim of the month of Tishrei. They have in them both extremes. On the one hand, they're connected with the level of the essence that's beyond measure and boundary. As we mentioned, all the different Yom Tovim, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, all of these things are way above and beyond Seder Ishtalshus. On the other hand, we connected how all these Yom Tovim have to do with the idea of Bina, Bina's understanding, Bina's limitation. Kivan she's galus ha'etzem, top of Yud base. Since the revelation of the essence is specifically and only when the purpose becomes fulfilled, that it comes down in a division of details. Therefore, there has to be the general avodah. There needs to be our avodah. This demands, just like Hashem manifests himself in Bina, which is above everything, into the details, so our avodah has to be in such a type of way of also joining the two extremes. And so that's kamayim haponim alponim. That's the idea of when the waters reflect the face back to the face. That when we act this way and we do our avodah down here in the joining of two extremes from above and beyond till the details. And so through that, we also, our days of Poil Mile, we affect also above. That the essence should be drawn down and become revealed in the form and the limitations of Seder Ishtalshus of the Spheres. And the truth is, we see this in many aspects of the Yom Tovim of Tishrei. Take, for example, Sukkot. There's a lot of detailed halachas of how to build the sukkah, about the daled minim, etc., etc. And we're grabbing hold of the greatest things, And we got to make sure, are the sukkahs wall exactly the amount of distance from the schach? Is the schach exactly in this position? Is the height or the width or the width or the breadth of the sukkah exactly in this way? Are the walls that way? Because the highest levels, the greatest levels, we need to join with the details, and through that the Eibishter becomes joined with us in from the highest levels into the details of Seder Ishtalshus. So the Rebbe goes on, second paragraph, line 7, the Inyan Zem Mudgish, Beklolos Chodesh Tishrei Gufim. This is emphasizing the general idea of the month of Tishrei itself. Besmiches ve'ahemshech shel Yom Kippurim v'Chag HaSukkos. In addition to what we said before, that each one of the Yom Tovim has the beyond Seder Ishtalshus and the details of Seder Ishtalshus, and both of them come together in Bina and so on. When you look at Tishrei as a whole, you see specifically this type of transition when going from Yom Kippur, which is the most like awesome, transcendent, above, into the days of preparing for Sukkot and the days of Sukkot itself. That it's about taking that unbelievable, awesome, transcendent, above world experience of Yom Kippur and now bring it down to the details of Sukkot. So he says, after the great advantage of what it says, once in the year, the level of Bechinas Yechida, Shalom Mailam Didvag Bol, the level we said Yom Kippur, the level of Yechidas beyond measure and boundary. Like we said, it has 5 tefillas. 5 tefillas show on the level of the 5 levels of the Nefesh. And it's Achas Bashana, Achas meaning the only day in the year, level of Yechida. What do you do right after Yom Kippur? We draw this down immediately, even before Sukkot, into the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Shem Keneged Arba Isa Shem Avai, that's brought down that the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot are corresponding to the four letters of the names Yud Kei Vav Kei. I don't remember for sure right now if this is also the reason why the day after Yom Kippur is called, in God's name, is called B'Shem Hashem. But be that as it may, it's about coming down into the details. Now there's the way you look at Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei as a wholeness that's transcendent, and then there's the way you look at the details of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So you're coming now down into the details of Yud Kei Vav Kei. And what are we doing then? The details of the mitzvah of Sukkot. Ubehem Kol Yisrael Sukkim and mitzvahs. And those 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, Eden are involved in mitzvahs, like we brought us in the previous mimer. This one's involved in putting together a sukkah. This one's involved in his lulav. These are general mitzvahs for the entire year. As we know that all the mitzvahs and all the celebrations and all the things that we do during Tishrei, the whole Tishrei is like one head, not just Rosh Hashanah, but the entire Tishrei, Reishis. So the word Rosh, head, it's a general mitzvah that pertains to the entire year. With this is emphasized the joining of the 2 extremes in the drawing down of the essence, specifically in the division of details, because from Yom Kippur, which manifests the highest level of the etzem, we're coming down into the details of the mitzvahs of Sukkot, etc. According to this will also be understood concerning Simchas Torah, which was our original question. How is Torah, which is about understanding, how do you mean that you're celebrating understanding with a level of dancing which has to do with the feet? By prefacing, though the study of Torah has to be an understanding and comprehension through the toil of intellect, specifically, still in all Inyan, there has to be the idea that says that when Hashem is with him, that the Chazal learned from this, that's machloikis, both sides. Havai imoy, that's halacha kamoisoi. When halacha is an expression of havaya, higher than Seder Ishtalshus. In other words, la sukya shmaitza libed hilchsa. One needs to bring the sugya down to the halacha. That's higher than just having the different opinions. How does one reach halacha? Halacha is the nitty-gritty, the details. What do we have to do in this physical world? So that the Torah study should be in such a way that one can bring it down into the details in this world. In halacha, it's insufficient just understanding and comprehension. There has to be the idea of bittul. There has to be the acceptance of the yoke of Hashem. In the way how a servant serves and how a simple servant serves, not just with my mind. That when he's studying, he's not studying for his own needs or for his own delight and enjoyment, because Torah is a pleasurable experience. But rather he is focused on finding out the truth of Torah, how it has to be the ruling of Allah in actuality. The halacha is the conclusion and the ultimate purpose. The entire purpose of creation was to do Torah mitzvahs in this world. So all my learning is there just to be able to derive the halacha. Because he's trying to reach the actual halacha, he goes into depth in much greater toil, much more effort. And only through this extra toil does he reach the true concept, what's going on, to be able to reach the halacha. Through toiling, that's how he could reach to the essential concealment. Like the Zohar says in the pasuk, he does to those that await him, those that put an effort, they pressure themselves in matters of wisdom of Torah. Then they reach the level of Eden. Eden is higher than Gan Eden. On Eden it says, it's that concealment that we spoke about before. No eye has seen it except for the Eibishter has seen it. That this is the level it says, the Torah says, I am by him a plaything. In other words, it's higher than Torah the way it comes to us. How do we reach the level of Torah the way it's concealed within Hashem? Through our effort to bring it down, like it's explained at the beginning of Samach Vav. To such a degree, when a person puts an effort to bring out and understand the halacha l'maisa, this causes an elevation in the Torah also. Like it's known that David would join Torah above and with the Eibishter. In other words, he caused an elevation in Torah itself. To draw down Torah, this essential concealment of the Ein Sof. So now, getting back to our topic, just like halacha does that by bringing out something in halacha, so then I tap into the deepest level of Torah, which is beyond Havon of Asagi, because that bittul of Kabbalah's oil. So this is also this is also expressed with the joy with the Torah in a way of dancing specifically with the feet. Like was mentioned previously, that Yidden become the legs of the Sefer Torah. It indicates the idea of drawing down here below until actual action, the feet. Only through coming down to the feet, to action, to halacha, is it a greater elevation in Torah. From the dancing with the Torah and Simchas Torah, comes down for the entire year, and empowerment for the general avodah and the Torah study and fulfillment of mitzvahs. Beginning from establishing set times for Torah, including also the idea of supporters of Torah, without taking consideration with all types of calculations, that he becomes, he's totally involved in Torah. He doesn't say, oh, I got to do this and that. Through that, to such degree that through that becomes the idea of the redemption. Beginning from the specific redemption, the individual redemption of every single Yid. Being top of the last page, like you explained, concerning he's redeemed with peace my soul. Every person can reach their own individual redemption. Until we reach the level of the Geula of Klal Yisrael, but Bias Mashiach Tzidkein, the coming of Mashiach, Yahweh will come and redeem us and lead us upright to our land.